I, 37 male, met my wife, 33 female, 12 years ago at a cafe in the city. I remember the day vividly. She was sitting at a table drinking a cup of warm tea and reading a book while she was wearing this adorable little dress and a sweater. Right away, I thought she was the most beautiful woman I'd ever seen. I was never really much of a ladies' man, so it took a little while for me to work up the nerve to talk to her, but when I did, we hit it off right away. We dated for 3 years, and we've been married for 9. She and I have gone through a lot together, but in the end, we've both always known that we had each other. After we got married, we wanted to try to have a baby and start our family. Now we have one beautiful daughter. It really felt like we were the perfect, happy family. She and I both work full-time. We have good jobs with good benefits and a solid security blanket. I knew she wanted to quit her job and stay home with our daughter full-time, but that wasn't practical for us unless we wanted to make a lot of major cutbacks in our lifestyle. After the pandemic, her job started this healthy lifestyle reward system. The idea was to get the employees who had been more sedentary when they were working from home back up and being active by rewarding them with gift cards, movie tickets, etc. My wife was actually pretty excited about it. She had been quite stressed out, and she wanted to start taking a yoga or Pilates class, something like that, so she could try to distress while she was being active. It was the perfect time to do it, so she enrolled in a yoga class at a local studio. She started out by going once or twice a week just so she could get a hang of how it works. Every time she came back, she was exhausted, but she would tell me that she could already feel how she was less stressed out. As time went on, she was taking more classes at the studio. Twice a week turned into every other day, which turned into almost every day. She was enjoying herself, so I didn't really think much about it. She had even told me about friends she made at the studio. It seemed like her social life was thriving. She was happy and she was confident. Everything seemed fine. One day, she came to me and told me that she was changing her class schedule to take something in the evening instead of in the morning. It worked out better for her, so I didn't think much of it at the time. Her morning classes usually lasted an hour. She returned home about an hour and a half after leaving. The evening classes took a lot longer. I wasn't immediately suspicious that something was going on, but after a couple of weeks, I started to wonder. I pulled her aside one day and asked her why she was always coming home so late, and she told me that the class was more intensive, so it lasted a bit longer. She explained that with this class, they begin with a meditation, then go into more elaborate poses, and then after class, she and a lot of the other students would hang around and chat for a bit. She was so sure about everything she was saying that I had no reason to doubt it. I'd never had a reason not to trust her before, so my worries were soothed. It wasn't long after that conversation that I was at work one day when I got a text message from my wife. Attached was a picture of her standing in front of our bedroom mirror naked. She and I had never really sent each other pictures like that, especially not while I was at work. It was something that I'd heard other couples have done to spice things up a bit. What really caught my eye with the entire message was the text attached. In the message, she said that she couldn't stop thinking about the night before. I was confused. We hadn't done anything the night before. I didn't know what she was talking about. She replied back very quickly, telling me that she had sent the text by mistake. She made a joke about how voice-to-text didn't capture what she said properly. She tried to clarify it by saying she couldn't wait for tonight. I honestly didn't buy what she was saying. I thought right away that she had sent me the entire message by mistake. I knew it was meant for someone else. I spent the rest of the day at work anxious and worried that something was wrong. When I got home, my wife was instantly telling me that she had a headache, felt dehydrated, and had been vomiting. I thought it was interesting timing. I had an old friend from high school who used to work as a cop, but they changed their career to work as a private investigator. I reached out to him and explained my situation, and he said that he'd be happy to help. I played it cool while he was looking into what was going on. I didn't want to raise any suspicion to give my wife the upper hand in continuing her lies. About a week after he started, we met for lunch at a restaurant in town where he showed me the evidence. I had been right to suspect there was something going on. I was honestly shocked to find out that it was with her yoga instructor. In hindsight, She only referred to the instructor as the instructor. She never used any pronouns like he or she. Maybe I was in the wrong, but I assumed it was a woman. On top of that, I had voiced my concerns to her about her late-night classes, and she lied to me with such ease. He showed me evidence in the form of pictures, videos, and messages he was somehow able to get his hands on. I had a full collection of documents for their infidelity. Divorce was the only option for us. I would not be giving her a choice in the matter. We wouldn't be going to therapy, and we wouldn't even be having a discussion about it. I went back home, trying to think of the best way to go about all of it. I was angry, and I was beyond hurt by her. I wanted to get even for what happened. She had a Christmas party for work coming up, so I figured I could use that opportunity to embarrass her. After all, it was her work health benefits program that sparked all of this. I had everything ready to go to serve her with the divorce papers, so when we left later that day, I mentally prepared myself for what I was getting into. As with every work Christmas party I went to, my wife walked around the room and said hello to people while I joined the few people that I was familiar with. After a few minutes, though, I went around the room and introduced myself as my wife's ex-husband. I enjoyed seeing the little wrinkle in their eyebrows when I introduced myself that way. I could tell that they were all curious about why I was there. One of her coworkers said that she had no idea we ended things. I got to tell her that my wife didn't either. She was very confused, but I watched her spread what I said to everyone else there. Everybody in the room was gossiping about my wife. They probably thought I was crazy too, but I didn't care. Toward the end of the evening, her boss got everyone's attention and made a toast. When she was done, I chimed in on the tail end and made my announcement. My wife stared at me with her jaw hanging on the ground when I told her about how I found out about her affair. Everyone else in the room was a little tipsy and very intrigued by what I was saying. They would be talking about that Christmas party for years. Honestly, I wouldn't blame my wife for quitting. I told my wife that it was over, gave her the papers, and drove home without her. As far as the instructor goes, I called the studio that he worked for, and they have a strict policy about employees being involved with clients. He was fired from the studio. My wife and I went through with the divorce. Because she cheated, things were not favorable to her. We have joint custody of our daughter, and I got to keep the house. She's staying with her sister while she figures out where she's going to be living. OP, I'm so sorry you had to go through that. You had your doubts about what was going on, and she was able to lie to you without any guilt. What she said about the yoga class was very convincing. I don't blame you one bit for believing what she said, especially if you had no reason not to trust her before. The text message was definitely meant for the instructor. She realized her mistake right away and tried to fix it so you would think nothing was going on. It's good that you had a friend that was able to help you out and get the evidence you needed to come out on top in the divorce. I imagine working at the same place where you told everyone about the affair is going to be quite difficult for her. I'd be interested to know how uncomfortable staff meetings are with her present. Anyway, I hope you are able to recover from this, and I wish you the best of luck moving forward. Now, let's move on to our next story. I, 25 male, met my wife, 24 female, in high school. We were friends during the first few years. I always had a crush on her and asked her to prom during our senior year, and we've been together ever since. We ended up getting married about 6 months after graduation because she got pregnant. That's not to say that we didn't love each other. She was my best friend, the person who meant the most to me in the entire world. We just had to rush things along a little bit. We both come from a small, conservative town, and people talk. We thought it was the best option for us. She has always been close with her family, closer than I was with mine. Sometimes I thought it was strange, but the more I was welcomed into it, I was a little jealous. Her family shared things, and everyone was genuinely happy to be around each other. Her mom had remarried shortly before we got together, so she had a new stepfather and stepbrother and sister. We moved out into our own apartment and started living our life. She got a job helping at the library in town, and I started working at my dad's construction company. Everything was going very well for us. Her mom helped with the baby a lot. We enjoyed a simple life with good friends and a loving family. 4 years later, not much had changed, but my father told me he was retiring and I would be in control of his construction company. With this promotion came a huge increase in pay. We were going to be able to buy a house and start saving up for college. I was ecstatic. However, the workload was surprisingly much more than I thought it would be. I was used to working 4 10-hour days, but with my new responsibilities, I was working 5 to 6 days a week and averaging about 70 total hours. I could feel the strain it was putting on my marriage, but I figured it was the best way to make sure our kids had everything they needed. Things went on like that for a while. All the while, when I was at work, she would be home or with her family. I didn't expect anything was going on. Even having suspicions about it seemed wrong. But here I am writing this post. During the spring and summer, work always gets incredibly busy, so I'm around at home less and less. Recently, I'd noticed that my wife's stepbrother was coming around more often to hang out while I was out. It seemed perfectly normal. He was with his stepsister and nephew. I had no reason to suspect anything else was happening. He called her and texted her. They would chat on Snapchat all the time, things that I interpreted as normal activity. One night, I was off work and my wife and I were alone watching a movie. I ran to the kitchen to get us some popcorn and I saw her phone on the table. I didn't immediately decide that I was going to go through it. I picked it up, planning on just bringing it to her because she left it there. When I hovered over the screen, I saw that she had a message from her stepbrother asking for her to think of an excuse to go to his house. I thought it was weird. My mind didn't immediately go to the reality of what was happening. While the popcorn was still in the microwave, I did a quick look to see what the context of the message was. They were both exchanging suggestive messages about wanting to be together again. He even said how he'd had a thing for her since before their parents got married. My wife agreed and said that it was unfortunate they never had a chance to explore what they had. I scrolled further back and saw messages and videos they'd shared with each other. I felt sick to my stomach. I actually thought I might collapse on the ground and vomit. No, they're not blood related, but they're still family. It was disgusting to me. On top of that, she'd been hanging out with him in our home with our child. My mind ran through countless different scenarios of what could have happened. Right away, I confronted my wife. We had a huge blow-on argument which resulted in her storming out, no doubt going to her stepbrother. I began looking into divorce the following morning. I considered my options about what to say to her family too. She came back late the next day and we had a discussion. I was still very angry, but our child was home and awake, so I didn't want to upset him. She begged me not to tell anyone about it, saying it would destroy her family. She tried to convince me it was a momentary lapse in judgment, but I wouldn't listen. I told her I wouldn't tell her family, but I knew that was a lie. She betrayed my trust, so I was going to get back at her. A few months had passed and she and I ended everything. I moved out and we were still in the midst of figuring out custody. I had no idea what she was telling her family about our separation, but I told mine the truth. I picked my son up from her house, and he told me all about a huge family barbecue they were having the following weekend. It was the perfect time for me to come clean. Nobody had any idea I would even be going to the event. I just showed up uninvited. Everyone was curious about why I was there. I definitely didn't feel welcome, so I figured I'd make my point and then leave. I joined a group of people at a table, including her mom, stepdad, and stepbrother, and I told them everything I knew. Her stepbrother looked like he wanted to leap over the table and strangle me, but instead, he denied my claims and called me a liar. I think everyone around us knew that his impassioned denial was too defensive to not be at least a little bit true. Her mom pulled me aside and asked me how I knew. I could tell it broke her heart, and I felt bad about being the one to tell her, but she needed to know. I ended up leaving the barbecue with my son for the rest of the weekend. Apparently, neither of them is welcome at any other family gatherings, and most of her family thinks they're disgusting for what they did. OP, I can't believe you had to go through something like that. It's hard to imagine your partner betraying you to begin with, but even more difficult when it involves someone so close to the family, or in this case, technically in the family. Your wife and her stepbrother not only betrayed your trust, but could have potentially hurt their parents' relationship as well. It was a selfish, foolish thing to have done, and they both deserve to be called out for it. It is also disturbing that your wife had her affair partner around your child so much. I think you are right to worry about what was happening while you weren't around. Hopefully, you and your son are able to carry on after the divorce and continue living a stable life. I wish you nothing but the best. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, comment below with your thoughts on what happened. If there is a story you would like to share with me about your own situation or someone else's, then please do not hesitate to contact me. Take care.